Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Hidden Harvest with Liz. I am Liz, and I will be your hostess on the What If. Today we are what ifing a brand new thing that was actually brought to me during one of my streams. And for those of you who don't know, who are brand new, who have never seen my other channel, I am also a gamer. I play on the channel More to Me for Life. That is where most of my content is and has been for the last 6 years. I have just recently started this gardening channel, and we have started doing the What If because in a lot of situations I am playing games that involve survival, and this is some of the things that I think about while I'm playing games and also while I'm working on other stuff and things. So today's What If. Let's get into our What Ifopedia. This one I actually wrote up on the 5th, and I am recording it now for next week because this past week I didn't have quite enough footage for all of this stuff and things, and this one came up during one of my streams, and we what ifed it completely on the stream. Okay, during the stream we were discussing survival situations and how to handle certain situations, and I had a viewer of mine saying that they felt like that they would be a detriment to any team because they were wheelchair bound. It's a frustrating thing to hear because it's like you want to tell them that everything's okay and everything will just work its way out. But it would be a lie to insinuate that having certain issues may not cause some problems in a survival situation. That is just talking with your blinders on. It's not actually fully what-ifing the situation. You actually have to get at the meat of the situation and work your way through it. That's the whole point in doing the what if. So this particular what if is what if you were a detriment to your group surviving during a shit hits the fan scenario. In this particular situation, the chatter informed me that they were wheelchair bound. Basically, from head to toe, if you can think of a problem, there's probably someone in my chat who either experiences it or a significant other experiences it. So that is what we're going to hit on today. Now, I cannot speak for every single medical condition out there. There are tons and tons of medical conditions that cannot just be willed away. They cannot be exercised out. They cannot be therapied out of you. There are some situations where these issues exist. I would say at this particular point, if you happen to have a medical issue that can be resolved or lessened due to exercise, seeing a psychologist or a therapist of some sort like that, say you actually have like chronic depression or things like that, I would definitely recommend researching whatever it is your condition is and figuring out if there's anything you could be doing homeopathic, things that you can do for yourself, like the power of positive thinking and things like that. You may have a medical condition, and there will be certain things that you will need to consider in a survival situation. For instance, if you have an issue with your legs, say you are wheelchair bound. Now, there are a lot of things which might result in you being wheelchair bound. It could be a problem with your legs. It could be a problem with your spine. It could be an underlying issue that actually led to these things, such as extreme obesity, that have actually caused you to get to where your legs no longer work and everything else like that. I cannot in any way in one video cover every single health condition that there is in the world and say this is how you work through that. Instead, what I'm going to say is there is one thing that I can think of aside from the obvious, but the obvious being is if you can exercise, even if it's light exercise. If you can eat better. If you can go to a therapist and find a better mental state to help you, go to a therapist and do the mental state therapy that you need in order to feel better. All of those things, every single one of them, are going to help with whatever medical condition you have. Eating better, exercising, and therapy. All of those are in some way going to help. If you have bad legs, exercise your arms. If you have bad arms and legs, exercise your mind. Aside from that, because I know that there are going to be people who are like, I can't do any of that because my medical condition won't let me. I beg to differ. And here's why. Because my last one was to say, therapy. That's not going to help you. Being able to talk to somebody about the experiences that you're dealing with, being able to unravel any kind of trauma that you're having to deal with because of it. Finding yourself in a more positive state of mind is not going to help you. That's the only reason I will say is if you got to the end of that entire conversation and your immediate response is, I can't do that, you're not thinking hard enough. So to not attack anybody who is injured or anybody who is suffering some sort of a medical something or another. I am going to move on past that, as there are ways of making certain things more livable, certain things, even now, even if it's not a survival situation, that you can do to make things a little bit better for you. I've already told you guys the inspiration, which is number two. The first one is the what if, how to handle being someone that you feel like you're a detriment in some way to a group in a shit hits the fan scenario. And it does not even have to be a medical condition that's stopping you. Say you've gotten to this point in your life and you realize you have no survival skills at all and therefore would not be of help. Or maybe you fully acknowledge to yourself, dude, I'm a wimp. What the heck am I going to do? I sat on the couch and I ate my Doritos. I didn't do nothing. How am I supposed to help? That's what all this one is about, is to get you thinking about that situation. Should you find yourself in an apocalyptic situation, a bad situation, this is the time right now to start thinking about, should you be in one of those situations, what are you offering a group? The name one thing to help people become not a detriment to their group in a shit hits the fan scenario. Let me go back to the individual who is in a wheelchair. Now, I do not know their specific issue, like what led to them being in a wheelchair. They may give me one reason, and somebody else who is in a wheelchair will also have another reason, and somebody else who is in a wheelchair will have another reason. And this is actually an answer to all of those reasons. For the most part, if there's like other issues aside from just being in a wheelchair, this may not apply. Obviously, I can't cover every single medical issue. The name one thing would be learning skills. And the reason I say that is because in a lot of cases, especially in an apocalyptic situation, a survival situation, you are going to have people who can be doers and people who can be thinkers and knowers. And what I mean by that is there's going to be a lot of strapping young men or young women that can go out and do a thing. Whatever that thing is, hunting, gathering, scavenging for materials, there's going to be that group and they have their job. Whereas if you are a knower, you're going to know things from the old world or old things or things that you have learned over the years. Think of like The Walking Dead. We had people like Rick and all of them that could go out and do things. But then you had the knowers, and that would be like the farmer dad. Think of Herschel. He knew a lot of things. He knew a lot about gardening. He knew how to handle gardening, and he was also injured. One of his legs was taken away from him right after they moved into the prison. So he had to deal with that. He knew he would not be able to run along with everybody else, that he was going to hold people back, but he didn't give up, and he definitely shared his information with everybody that actually allowed them to live, because they not only used that at the prison, they also used it later, the information that they gained then in Alexandria. So that also helped. Oh, it's got several of them actually. Eugene. All right. And then on the case of Eugene, now Eugene lied about his manner of importance, but Eugene also had a lot of information that he had just gathered over the years. And not only that, he knew how to put it into use. Eugene was not a fighter. He was not a scavenger. He was not any of that stuff, especially at the beginning, but he knew bits of information like the battery with the gum foil and stuff like that on how to get a fire lit. He knew how to do things like that. So I would say learning skills and learning how to build and know how to do things, even if you yourself can't get up and put them together. At one point, I've already forgotten who it was because I don't think that they stayed on there for more than one episode unless they showed up later on. But there was a lady inside a van that was going around and saying, if you give me a whole bunch of stuff, I will give you this big book of information. And that big book of information was how to do irrigation, how to make windmills, things like that. All of those things, all of those skills that people have forgotten how to do in this world, should things get real bad, and who knows, they might, knowing how to do those types of things would keep you alive. And it's not just that. There are other things that you could do. Say you are in a survival situation, there was a big storm, and everybody got into a shelter of some sort, and it's you and a whole bunch of other family members, and you really can't get up and do a whole lot. So you're trying to figure out how on earth you manage to make yourself valuable to your entire group, but you can't really move around, or you have some other issue that actually stops you from being able to be an active member inside that group. Say, for instance, there are a ton of children in that group, because a lot of times in survival situations, the children are going to cluster together. They're going to cluster together with their families and stuff like that, and they're going to be terrified, and they're going to be clinging to their parents and stuff like that. In that situation, the parents that have the ability to actually physically help with whatever it is that they are trying to do need a chance to be able to move away from their children just long enough to be physically helpful for their children. In which case, if you could tell a story, just a simple story, an old school story, and it doesn't even have to be anything very special. You can make up your own story. You can think of a story you've heard 1,000 times. I think if anybody needed to, they could probably whip up a story of Cinderella out of their rear end and maybe not get all the details right, but you could do it. You could probably recite the storyline of one of your favorite movies and just tell the story to them. Because not only would you be entertaining the children, you would be taking some of the relief off the parents, and it would, in some way, I don't know, in my opinion, in a survival situation, even if it's just like a momentary survival situation, like there's been tornadoes and stuff like that, and small families are getting together, and there's some dealing with all of that, if there is a moment where art and stuff like that can come back through, that offers... I don't know. It offers people the hope of something more in their future, that everything is not always going to be this. I would say the ability of people to survive in a situation is going to be how much their imagination allows them to survive, or how much their imagination and their fear allow them to not survive. You can learn skills. Even if all of that skill is telling stories that you remember from when you were a child, telling stories that you know from history books, telling stories from stories that you have heard on TV, and just being able to tell those in an engaging way to help people out, or to sing, or to make music, or something like that, because those things lift people out of that situation. Am I going to lie and say, hey, you knowing how to tell a story about Cinderella is going to, in some way or another, keep you alive? These people are going to choose to keep you alive because you know the story of Cinderella? I won't lie to you and say that. I will not lie to you and say that. I would say making yourself invaluable in other ways is a way of doing it. But telling yourself now that you have no skills and you have no benefit to people around you is, first off, it's going to stop you from being able to learn the things for those types of scenarios, but it's also, in some way, I feel like if you have that mentality now, there are probably things in your life now that you're not doing because you're allowing it to hold you back in some way. Is your inability to do it predicated on you not changing how you are now to get better, to be able to do the thing that you needed to do or wanted to do? And that is going to be a life choice that everybody is going to have to make for themselves. Typically, when people are trying to go from having a sedentary lifestyle to having an active lifestyle, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of working your way through it, and it also takes a mental component that some people aren't willing to do just yet. And the reason I say that is because that would be similar to someone trying to quit smoking or stopping drugs or something like that. It takes you mentally preparing for that effort and understanding how painful it's going to be and saying, I'm going to do it anyway. I quit smoking, is it 3 years ago now? 4 years? 3 years ago, I think. And I literally felt like I was going crazy trying to quit smoking. So I know how that addictiveness, like your addiction to food, the addiction to sugar, the addiction to having someone help you, the addiction to being able to say, I don't have to worry about it because somebody else is going to cover it for me. That is also an addiction that has to be faced, and you have to work your way through it in whatever small way you can. Even if you can't go the whole way yourself and you need help, going partially is better than not going at all. And in a lot of cases, it takes a lot of mental fortitude, and some folks have it and some folks don't. And some folks get it later on. If needed, expand here. There's so much expansion here. If you're trying to learn new skills, obviously there's a lot of different types of books. I would recommend trying to learn primitive skills. Any type of primitive skill, even if it's like books and stories and everything else like that about how to start a fire, how to do a basic irrigation, how to garden. In my case, I am growing for my family to have food, but I'm growing for the knowledge of how to do it, the science behind it, the experimentation about what does and does not work for us. Because for a long time, I just grew a tiny little garden that gave us a little bit during the summertime and I stopped. So basically a kitchen garden. Now it's more serious. I'm actually expanding the garden to give us more food and giving me the ability to experiment with things to find out how they grow here. When is the best time to grow it? How much can I expect to get out of it? And how often will a crop fail? So these are experiments I'm running, and I would encourage you to keep a journal of these things that you are learning, because at some point, what you write down may not even help you. It might help your children, your niece, your nephew, your neighbor, anybody else like that. Gather all of your information, how to irrigate things, how to build windmills, how to find underground springs, how to go out into the woods and find mushrooms that you can actually eat, herbs that you can actually eat that are out in the wild, those kinds of things. Every little bit of information that might help you, and write it down, because if you're anything like me, I got a bad memory, so I write things down. I would say start now, and rather than thinking about what you can't do, think about what it is you can do and what you can offer. And if you can't think of a single thing, first off, I would say it's time for a mental assessment, because everybody has something to offer. Even if you don't think that you do, everybody does. Everybody. Even if it's something small, even small things are important. For research, it's time to dig deep. That's what I wrote, is it's time to dig deep, because people are going to have to face themselves, and a lot of people aren't ready to face themselves, in which case you might want to put this on the back burner until you're ready to face yourself, because you have to actually look at yourself and be honest with yourself. How much of it how much of it can you do? How much can you not do? And how much of it are you saying I can't do, but you actually can? You're just not willing to put the effort in, because that's going to be your first hurdle right there. It's like trying to get someone to stop smoking. I can't stop smoking because I have so much stress. Well, until you get to the point to where you admit that, yeah, it's a me problem and I can survive stress. People survive without cigarettes all the time. I know I can quit. Then you actually have to start thinking, but how do I do it? Use common sense and a lot of empathy. Whenever you do this for somebody else, I would definitely recommend self-assessment, because a lot less there, and you can, I don't know, assess as deep as you wish to and pull back when you start feeling uncomfortable. And then next time, try for like that deeper assessment. What can I do? What do I physically have the ability to do that I'm scared of failing on, or I'm scared of finding out that I actually have more ability than I actually do? And what do I do with that information once I find out I have it? And the reason I say it that way is because there are some people who live their life where part of their identity, part of who they are, is whatever it is that they're dealing with. And by that, I mean, like, this sickness is who they are. And if they don't have this sickness, and if they don't have this trauma defining them, then they don't know who they are. And not knowing who you are after years of building who you are around this trauma can be terrifying for some folks, because then that's a deeper look than most people are willing to do, especially if there's like really deep trauma or a physical malady that has been around since they've been young, in which case I would say seek therapy to get to that point. That's all I can say about that, because I know that there's going to be at least 5 or 6 people that are in the comment section saying that's not going to help me. I know I can't wish this one away as much as I wish I could wish away diseases and illnesses for some of my closest friends. I can't do that. Speaking as a significant other type of situation, how do you tell a significant other that this situation that they're dealing with is made worse by the way they think about it? They feel they are a victim, and therefore they are. And therefore they're not going to get better. If you are one of those types of spouses, significant others, best friends, or whatever, of one of those types of situations, I would say group counseling might be a thing, and intervention might even work. Remember that in a shit hits the fan scenario, that any of your addictions are going to come into play. If you smoke cigarettes, if you're an alcoholic, if you drink exorbitant amount of caffeine, which is going to be mine, I'm going to have headaches forever should it hit the fan. If you're addicted to sugar, and trust me, sugar is one of the most addictive substances. I'll crave sugar before I crave caffeine or anything else. So if you're addicted to any of those, remember that those might not be crippling now, And you might think you have no health issues now. Should a shit hits the fan scenario happen, someone who is trying to get off of cigarettes because there are no cigarettes, some of those folks, especially if they've been smoking for a long, long time, are not going to be the same people for about 2 weeks. So you can choose to put that on your friends and family, or you can choose to quit smoking. I can tell you it's hard. I can tell you it can be done. As far as alcohol goes, same issue. There are some people who have physical withdrawals to it, in which case, because they've been drinking so long, they actually need to seek physician assistance in quitting drinking. That's really the only thing I can say as far as addictions, as far as it pertains to this. And does this help in life? Hell yeah. And the reason I say that is even if any of these situations never happen, say a shit hits the fan scenario never happens, there's never a zombie apocalypse, there's never a society collapse, the banks don't go under and the inflation goes into a deep depression, should none of that happen, should there never be a solar flare, should there never be an EMP, should there never be another hurricane, a tornado, a tsunami, should there never be a volcanic eruption, should there never be a storm, an ice storm or anything like, should none of these ever happen in your life ever, would all of this stuff still be helpful? Yes. And the reason I say that is, first off, everybody having a more positive outlook on their situation and their health and everything else like that. It's just common sense. Yeah, you definitely, in no way can having a positive attitude negatively impact your physical body, unless of course your positive attitude is contradictory to your physical body. Yes, I can definitely fly. That's not what I mean. Don't be silly. You know what I mean. And also for those who have the ability to exercise, eat better, the whole 9 yards, even if you can't exercise, but you can eat better and you can see a therapist about some issues you're having, those two will help. So just because you can't do all of it doesn't mean you can't do some of it. And all of those are going to help you. And as far as the learning skills, that helps you either way. Even if you never use it, the concept of exercising your mind helps your mind stay younger. So even if it's all it is the stories or the singing or something like that, your partner, your friends, your family, that's still a way of bringing your family and your connections closer. And if all you can do is say, okay, I'm going to collect a whole bunch of information and I'm going to write it down and stuff like that. The apocalypse is going to need a historian as well. Who knows? Maybe you're good at journaling, in which case your journals could tell the future generations what happened during whatever it was that situation was. I think that's pretty much all I've got for today. This was a long-winded, and I have no idea how it's going to turn out. And I think that is it. I probably have already stepped on way too many toes and upset enough people with this particular one, but I can't really think of better ways of phrasing the things that I did, and I hope that it has encouraged at least one person to think outside the box on what it means to survive and the things that you can offer a potential group that you're surviving with. I will see you guys next time when we try to what if another scenario. You have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and you stay shiny. Bye.